Welcome and welcome and welcome to the channel. I got some news for you. Breaking news, breaking news. Canadian government is putting a 2-year cap on international students, reducing the amount of students coming as much as 35% to 50% in some provinces. Make sure you watch the entire video to get a full scope. Thank you, and I hope you enjoyed this episode. And make sure you share and also subscribe. Hello everyone, and once again welcome to the channel. It's your boy KB, and today I have a special announcement for you, and this is coming from Canada. And I have my laptop here, so I'm going to be reading it alongside. It says the federal government announces a 2-year cap on student permits. This is a measure to limit international student permit. It comes in a response to the housing crunch. And I think if you've been following my YouTube videos, I've been talking quite a bit about the crunch and also accommodation issues that Canadians are having, specifically with the international students. So when this news came, it wasn't any surprise. The writing was on the wall because of all the difficulties international students and also visitors are facing in Canada. So in this video, I'm going to break it down, the reason behind this cap for the 2 years. So this is coming from Immigration and Citizen Minister Mark Miller, and he held this new conference on Monday, January 22nd, and this is what he has to say. With a stated goal of targeting institutional bad actors and amid concern about the impact growing numbers of international students are having on the housing markets, Immigration Minister Mark Miller announced Monday that the federal government will cap the number of student permits over the next 2 years. So this is, as I've mentioned before, because of all the stress international students are going through, and initially they move the amount of money that individual is eligible from 10,000 Canadian dollars to $20,000, and all was to help this international student to be able to afford the common living in Canada. So when this news came, I wasn't fully surprised, because if you look at the accommodation for international students, this is one of the areas where their money goes towards the most. For example, a 1-bedroom house, if an individual is looking for, it can cost them between about $800 to about $1,000, depending on which provinces that they are on. I'm speaking specifically of Ontario. At least at the minimum, it will cost you between $800 to $1,000 just for 1-bedroom Canadian. And that's quite a bit of a strain, because as an international student, you're actually coming in to pay a very high amount of student loan and also student debt. So also to be adding this kind of amount onto your tuition, your groceries, your transportation is quite heavy. So this is where this is coming from. So let's continue to read on. The government say it will approve approximately 360,000 undergraduate study permits for 2024. And this is a 30% reduction since 2023. So pretty much with this kind of cut, that's going to cut about 35% of all the applicants that came to Canada in 2023. And this is quite a significant amount. And you have individuals that would like to come to Canada to take advantage of the education system. But with this kind of cut, that's going to really impact people all over the world, across the globe, that would like to get their education in Canada. So let's continue to read on. It says in some provinces, Miller said the total reduction in permits will be approximately 50%. So if you take a province like Ontario, it's probably going to be more than 50%, not just 35. Other provinces where there's not much international students or they're not having accommodation issue, it might be about 35. But if you take a province like Ontario or maybe British Columbia, for example, the threshold might be different. It is unacceptable that some private institutions have taken advantage of international students by operating under-resourced campuses, lacking support for students, and charging high tuition fees, all the while significantly increase their intake of international students, said Miller. So the government feels like there's a lot of private institutions that actually doesn't even have a proper qualification once the individual finishes to become a permanent resident. They don't have that kind of route. But these institutions are making significant amount of money. They don't have the campus infrastructure. They don't have the accommodation for these international students, but they're still accepting them, charging them a very high fees just for the sake of coming to Canada. And most of these students, when they come in, they become very stranded. So this is one of the elements where the government is trying to carve some of these institutions for making money from these students that are not warranted. So the article continues. So in an interview with the CBC, The Power and Politics on Monday, Miller spoke of degree granting institutions that are giving fake business degrees to students who hope to stay in Canada. The minister said there could be 100 of such schools operating in Canada, and that the number has exploded in the last couple of years. This is Canada that we're talking about. There's some people that actually have found a loophole giving a fake degrees, fake nursing degrees, fake PhD degrees, fake engineering degrees, fake business degrees, all in the name of promising people that they will stay in Canada. And that's quite sad. And as a government, I think they're taking the proper initiative to carve this institution and all this money making machines. So let's continue to read on to see what this article says. So in addition to the cap, the federal government will also require international students applying for a permit to provide attestation letter from a province or territory. So now you're going to need an attestation form from a territory. So it's not just about applying and getting into school, but the province that you're actually going to go into, they're going to give you an attestation form to confirm that when you come here, we have the accommodation, we have the infrastructure, and also the school that you're coming to, they can actually accommodate to making sure that your life becomes easy and you're able to integrate into the Canadian culture and the economy and the education systems. To be absolutely clear, the article continues, these measures are not against individual international students, Miller said. They are to ensure that if future students arrive in Canada, they receive the quality of education that they sign up for and hope that they were provided in their home countries. So the essence of this is that if you're coming to Canada, the minister wants to ensure you are coming to get the proper education and the quality education that you sign up for, and not coming to get any mediocre sort of education. So this is one of the essences of providing these measures in place to carve and also continue to hold the pedigree of Canadian education. So let's continue to read on. Miller also announced changes to the postgraduate work permits. And he says, starting in September, international students who begin a program that's part of a curriculum license arrangement, one where a private college has been licensed to deliver the curriculum of Associated Public College, will no longer be eligible for postgraduate work permits. So now all schools that you bring to Canada is going to allow you to have a postgraduate work permit. So this is also something to keep in mind. So if you're applying for a school in any provinces or even in Canada in general, just also make sure that the school that you're applying for is going to give you the proper documentation, the work permit route, that once you graduate from the school, you'll be able to proceed to get your work permit. That's also a key. Graduate of master's and other short-term graduate level program will soon be able to apply for a 3-year work permit, the government says. Open work permit will also be made available to the spouses of international students in the master's and doctorate program. So now it looks like they're changing this a little bit. If you're a master's student or a PhD student, then you can still go ahead and bring your spouse. But likely, if it's an undergraduate or some sort of a private school, likely you might not get that spousal appraisal or the spousal sort of a work permit, which a lot of people have used it to come to Canada, even though they are not the primary individuals coming to study, but either their wife or their husband. So this is also something to keep in mind. The changes announced Monday come a little over a month after Miller first announced the measure intended to target what the minister described as a diploma equivalent of puppy mills. We have got 2 years to actually get the ship in order, Miller said on Monday. It is a bit of a mess and it's time to rein in. So the minister recognized that right now we are in a crunch mode and this is the time to actually put the foot down and the gas down to make sure we fix all this mess and all the influxes of students coming in, fake documentations and all these things, and accommodation becomes an issue. So he feels that this is the time to actually rein on all these elements. So as the article continues, it says Miller suggested the federal government will have preferred for provincial government to take actions. Post-secondary education is a provincial responsibility in Canada, and while the new federal rules may be primarily aimed at some private colleges, the changes might also renew concerns about the level of public funding provided by the provincial government to universities and colleges. But the other concern hanging over Monday's announcement is availability of affordable housing. So in a nutshell, it looks like there might be a trickle down, even though the target right now is the private colleges and all these non-eligible colleges, but it can actually trickle down in terms of the fundings that the ministry provide these provinces. So that's something to also be aware of. Now let's touch a little bit on the housing market. So this should have happened some time ago. Mike Moffat, an assistant professor at the Ivy Business School at Western University, said shortly after Miller's announcement. The provinces should have acted first, but it's good to see the federal government bring back some rationality back to the number of international students. So this individual is saying that this is a municipality and also provincial. They should have been doing this. But once they closed their eyes on this, it left the federal minister no choice but kind of rein down and bring some sort of stability and credibility back to these institutions in Canada. And this is what this minister is also saying. Mofa, also a senior director of the Small Property Institute, was in Montreal to brief cabinet ministers on a housing panel. He was also invited to address the cabinet last fall. He told reporters that the impact of surge international students varies across housing market, but in some cities is making massive difference. On the rental side, you have a low income renters all battling each other for a low number of spots, Moffat said. And on ownership side, what we are seeing is investors buying large quantities of single family homes and turning them into student rental, making it nearly impossible for first time home buyers to find a place to live. So pretty much it's kind of having a trickle effect on the housing market as well, because you have individual investors that are also buying a family homes and renting it to students. So now if you're Canadian, instead of having the money to buy your first property in Canada, people that have the big pockets, they actually are buying these houses and renting it to students. And some residents that's supposed to be a family home or very residential areas now is being targeted for student rentals because investors believe that they can make money on it. So this is all some of the areas where the government realized that if they don't act now, there's a lot of at stakes. There's a lot of at stakes, and I think this is the reason why they're taking these measures. Let's read a couple of few bullet points. Recent polling suggests a marked increase in public concerns about the effect of immigration levels in housing. Speaking later on Monday, the housing minister Sean Fraser told reporters his primary focus remained increase the rate of housing construction in Canada, but he said he also expects that some pressure will be alleviated in communities that have been taking in particular large numbers of students. So they actually addressing that even though Canada still needs to build a lot of homes to accommodate some of these travelers coming in, but in a nutshell, taking these measures on the international students approach, it will help alleviate some of the stress. So I'm just going to be bringing my message to the end, but in a nutshell, what the government is saying is that enough is enough. There's a lot of influx of international students. Canada currently doesn't have the infrastructure. The school system doesn't have infrastructures. Some of the schools are issuing fake certificates. Some of the schools are bringing people in that are not qualified to come to the country. So at some point, if the provinces are not doing anything about it, it's the mandate of the federal government to put a stop into this so the Canadians that are suffering can get their first homes. Canadians that are suffering, that cannot even get a place to stay because they're competing with these international students and the people that are visiting. The minister decided that this is the time to put a stop or a cap of 2 years on these international students coming into Canada. Even though the government predicted that they're going to be increasing people coming into Canada in the next 4 or 5 years, but looking at the housing crunches and the crisis that is going on, I think they took the right decision to actually carve down on these segments so that it could be well balanced. Because I always believe that anything that is not well balanced, it will tilt. So eventually, I think things will stabilize and things will get back to what it was before. But for now, I think this is the measures the Trudeau government is putting into place to cap the student intake for the next 2 years, reduce it by 35% and as much as 50% on certain provinces. So I'm just going to bring my message to an end. It's your boy KB, and I'm presenting to you what is currently happening in Canada. Make sure you share the video, make sure you subscribe, let the channel grow. Thank you, and we'll talk next time. Bye for now.